She couldn't find the business book she needed, so she wrote it. I'm Kandas Rodarte. This is Gratitude Geek, and today we are chatting with Becky Mollenkamp. Welcome, Becky.
Hi, Kandas. Thanks for having me.
So what would you like the audience to know about you?
I am ready to change the business space for the better, to make it more human-centric and less about feeding only those at the top of the food chain.
And the title of your book is Liberate Your Business.
That it is.
And you also host the wait, hold on. Shotspot. Now I can't remember the name of your podcast, even though I watch it all the time on YouTube.
Oh my goodness. Well, I co-host.
Messy Liberation.
Yes.
All right.
And Feminist Founders is another one I co-host.
You have multiple podcasts. What's the other one?
Well, I co-host two, Feminist Founders, Messy Liberation. I have one forthcoming called Analog-ish that's going to explore sort of the balance between online and offline living. And then I have one that's on hiatus. I don't know if it'll come back, called Assigned Reading, where we explore feminist essays.
Yeah. So that's a lot. That's a lot.
I like podcasting.
Anyway, I was going to make a comment about how I love that for your Messy Liberation podcast, you and your co-host always show up in pajamas. I just think that's brilliant.
We are casual as they get.
You're in your pajamas.
Look, I put on a little tiny bit of blush and lipstick for this today, so this is as dressed up as I get these days.
If I have hair on, I tried.
And you look great. I don't know that I've seen this hair before, so I like it. The dark hair.
This is totally, you know what? I have a little boo-boo on my head. I'm just going to tell you. I have a little boo-boo on my head, and this is the hair that is the softest on the inside, so it isn't irritating my boo-boo.
That's good to know.
I know. I that's probably TMI, but you know what?
I don't think so, because you were going to, I know secret stuff about your podcast experience. And one of those was, hey, maybe I should be talking a little bit more about the metastatic breast cancer issue. And that's a part of that. And I think it's good for you to share that, even if it's unrelated to what I'm here to talk about. I find it interesting. And if I do, having nothing to do with it, I have a feeling other people do as well.
I don't know if it's not unrelated.
Ooh.
Or if it is unrelated, because when you're building a business around a chronic illness, you are liberating your business because you're not going to follow the rules.
The rules are not built for those with any difference from what is considered the norm, right? And of course, the norm is yes, because really what the norm means is white, cishet, educated, upper class, male, right? Like Christian in the US, like a whole list of things that we could say. That's sort of what the norm, quote unquote norm, is built for. Any deviation from any of those aspects, and the system isn't built for you. And the more you deviate from those aspects, the more the system really isn't built for you. And in fact, often punishes you. So you're correct when you start to think about how do I build a business for me when I'm not that person, which is most of us.
Mm-hmm.
Then it looks like, how do I build something that honors how I show up? Fully, without having to mask, without having to pretend, without having to, put on all of the false stuff that we do. I mean, wear your hair, wear your eyebrows, put on the lipstick, but it's what feels right for you, and not having to show up the way that you've been told you must in order to be taken seriously, professionally, whatever those lies are that we've been told. So you're right. It is the same.
My husband and I were shopping for a vehicle. The salesperson was like talking to my husband only, and the car was for me. And he kept saying, the car is for her. The car is for her. And the salesperson kept talking to my husband. And so that was 2001.
It hasn't changed much, Kandas.
Oh, well, but I was thinking the pandemic should have shifted things, because so many of us started doing something new. We quote unquote liberated ourselves during the pandemic. We started new businesses. We started working from home. We started doing different things.
Well, because here's the thing. I think so many of us did build our own thing. The problem is so many of us built our own thing replicating what already existed. So what we built was only going to continue to perpetuate the same stuff that ultimately we want to be freed from. And it's not entirely our fault. It's because it's what we know. It's what we've always been exposed to. We don't know there's another way. And around that time was sort of that peak online business space of all the girl bossy, bro dudes who were telling us this is what it looks like to build your empire. And by the way, if you're building an empire, you are a colonialist. You are engaging in colonialism, and that isn't okay, right? And that includes in the business space. So all they were doing was teaching us how to get ahead in corporate America outside of corporate America. But that's just saying, here's the system as it exists. Let's just take it, replicate it. But now instead of the CEO that you used to work for being at the top of the pyramid, now we're going to put you up there. My whole point is we don't want a pyramid. We want to flatten that pyramid, because the pyramid, the hierarchies are where the problem comes up, because that's where we start to rank humans.
Well,
right?
Okay, so what does that look like in a business world?
It looks like collaborative decision making. It looks like collaborative business building. It looks like asking for help and not trying to do everything yourself. It looks like spreading the wealth, both literally and figuratively. So that means spreading the wealth when it comes to visibility, to opportunities, not just being the only one who always is saying yes and making it all about you, but who else could I invite to the table? Where could I pass this along? Because I've already had 6 podcast appearances and I know this Black woman who nobody's paying attention to in my space, and she's amazing. What if I suggest her instead? It also looks like figuratively passing the wealth, as in how much money do I actually need? And when I have more than that, where else could it go besides into my vacation fund or to empire building, right? It looks like paying people living wages, right? And again, inviting them into the table for helping to decide, how is something going to look inside my business? How is this going to operate inside of my business? Who can help share the load here? So it's less about saying this one person gets to shine and saying, how do we all shine? It's about, instead of one person getting rich. And by the way, CEOs now, they're making 300 times their employees, 300. Not in my lifetime, in our lifetime, Candace, that has gone up 200%.
Yeah.
Worker wages have not gone up 200%. Worker wages have gone up very steadily and slowly and small, while the gap between them and their employers has grown exponentially. So it's saying, instead of one person, all that wealth concentrating, and it's not just wealth, it's visibility, it's access, it's power, it's, choice, all of it is getting consolidated at the top. This is saying, how do we smush that back down so that we all have a part of it? It doesn't mean it all has to be equal, but it means we all get to have enough. And right now, many of us don't have enough, while many of us have way too much.
Well, federal minimum wage hasn't increased in almost 20 years. If not
there
more
are
than 20 years.
there are states leading the charge in that, and thank goodness. But yes, that is a problem, and that is only one. Again, that's just one more shining example where it's minimum wage isn't going up. Worker wages are barely keeping up with costs of living, especially in these last 5 years, while CEOs are continuing at this exponential rate of making more money.
So my daughter makes the same hourly rate that I made when I was her age. I went on vacation 3 times a year, drove a nice car, and lived by myself. She lives at home with her parents.
Yes, and my favorite is the baby boomers. And by the way, Candace, even some of us Gen Xers who don't understand, we grew up in a very different time. And I honestly think a lot of this, the real problems, it all really started with Reagan, so we could go back to the 80s. But where I think it really started to get really exacerbated was around that time of the Great Recession, on the heels of seeing all these people with the housing inflation and the tech bubble and all of that. And that sort of was the end of our generation. We got in under the wire of being able to accumulate some amount of wealth. Some of us, not all of us, but we were able to get decent paying jobs. We were able to build up some retirement nest egg. We were able to live well. Many of us were able to buy homes before the housing market got crazy. And since then, it has gotten completely different. So anyone who left college after probably 2000, 2005, they've been in a very different world.
Yeah.
Trying to buy a home?
Yeah.
Forget you trying to rent a home, trying to rent an apartment.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
You cannot live. And you're right. The pay has not kept up. And that's even pre-pandemic, pre-Trump. It has been that way. And it's only getting worse and worse and worse. And so I feel for the people who are young millennials, who are Gen Z, who are trying to go out about their professional lives and survive, while hearing from baby boomers especially, but also many Gen Xers who are saying I don't know what your problem is. Why do you have to move back home? Why can't you afford to live? I did this and this and this. Your life was very different than what it looks like to live today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the disconnect is so unbelievable. How you could actually believe that a person in their 20s today is in the same financial position that you were in 50 years ago when you were in your 20s.
It's really upsetting. I think millennials, I'm a younger Gen X. You're on the younger side of Gen X, but mid to younger Gen X. I think Gen X goes to like 1979, 1980, something like that.
1980. So yeah, I guess I'm in the middle.
I'm towards the end of it.
Yeah.
I'm only a little younger than you, but still towards the end of it. And I would say younger Gen X, but most especially millennials and on, these are going to be the first generations that probably will not do better than their parents.
Mm-hmm.
If you look over time since Industrial Revolution, generation after generation have done better. And that is even true for folks with the most marginalized identities. Does that mean they've kept up at the same pace? No, but still generation over generation, they are doing better than the generations before them. They had a different starting line if you have more marginalized identities, but you are still doing better. That is almost impossible for most people now without generational wealth. It is very hard for you to do better than your parents did now. And that's scary. I mean, that is what late stage capitalism looks like. When people talk about what's late stage capitalism versus capitalism, this is where we're at. We are seeing where it starts to look like the last gasps of a system. And this system isn't sustainable. There is only so much of a threshold that the system can bear before it will break. And that's where we're starting to get to. You can't have a gap of 300% between those with wealth and those without, with the, employers and employees. You can't have this kind of wealth gap where that 1% is owning almost half of the wealth. You can't have that before at some point it begins to break, because there are too many people who no longer have access and they're on the street. Then what do we do with them? We start to see all these solutions that are very inhumane, but eventually even that will begin to break and the revolt starts to happen. I'm not here to push violence, but I'm just saying when we talk about late stage, we're kind of getting to that place where the system becomes almost unsustainable. And I'm here to say, as business owners, we have a responsibility inside of that system. Even if we are business owners of one, we have a responsibility inside that system to challenge it and say, how can I push back to begin to create change? Individually, one business at a time begins to create change that hopefully can begin to combat that so that that system can begin to heal itself before it ruptures. Because if it doesn't start to heal itself, it will eventually rupture. We've seen this over time. Empires over time, this is what ends up happening. There's a pretty famous book about it too, that it's usually around 250 years, which is interesting. Here we are in our 250 years. But I don't want to see it rupture. I want us to see it heal.
I'm not sure that we are actually at our 250th year when you think about the actual empire stage, though, because Great Britain has been around for over 1,000 years, but it had 250 years of glory. So our 250 years, I'm arguing, started in 1940.
Interesting. You think with the sort of the end of the Industrial Revolution moving into more of the digital age.
Yeah, because before that we were an isolationist country, and we stepped into the global whatever.
The global stage.
And the global stage. And now we're at this point where we're like, oh, maybe we don't want to be there. But
here we are again.
But here we are again. But I think that once we get over this hiccup, but this is just from what I've learned, from my interpretation of history and my interpretation of capitalism are a little bit different than yours.
Which is fine.
But yeah, I know. But I think that it is our country, our nation is 250 years old, but I don't think it's the end of our story.
I don't know the end of our story either. I would say, I think we are at a crisis point.
Oh,
and I don't even
absolutely.
mean with democracy, although that is a part of it. I'm talking strictly around our financial system.
Yeah,
the structures of have and have nots, of wealth distribution. It is not sustainable for it to continue the way it is.
No.
It just isn't. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the collapse of the U.S. democracy necessarily, but people will begin to revolt in the same way that happened with the Industrial Revolution, where eventually we had workers stand up and say, this is not sustainable. You cannot keep working us 16, 18 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week. This doesn't work.
Yeah.
But it continued where those with the haves kept pushing and pushing to see how much can we take before this breaks. And I think we're there again in a different way than it was then, but it's a similar thing. So I think we're on the precipice of some sort of shift. The Industrial Revolution, by the way, that word, revolution, digital revolution. When I say I think we're on the verge of a revolution, I don't necessarily mean it has to be a bloody war revolution. It doesn't have to be the Civil War. But I think we are on the precipice of a revolution in the way that we operate as a society, in the same way we did with the Industrial Revolution, where I think, and I hope it looks a bit like that. I hope it looks like workers saying, this doesn't work for us. This is not sustainable. You cannot continue to extract until there is nothing left, because that's where we're getting to, where people are like, there's nothing left to give. And as business owners, I want us to make that same change for ourselves, because I think we've done that to ourselves. We have been extracting from ourselves to the point of so many of us burning out, not being able to function, and we've got to stop that.
There's a whole industry around burnout. The Industrial Revolution was not non-bloody. It was a bloody revolution.
Well, that is true too.
I mean, but
yeah, no, we don't have to get into history too much. But
I actually love history. I wish I could talk about it more.
I guess when I mean bloody, I'm thinking more like the Civil War.
Yeah.
But yes, because even the civil rights and that time and that we now think of as sort of the civil rights movement in the 50s, even though we've had multiple versions of that, it was bloody as well. It may not have been bloody on the scale of a civil war, but it was certainly bloody, right? And that, I guess my point is, I don't want to incite violence. I'm not here to incite violence.
No,
I'm just
saying. And I don't think we need to incite violence though to be change agents in this time. So there was a TV show called The Continuum that was on like a decade ago, and it was about a time traveler who came back from the future. And in the future, corporations took over the United States government. And so the government was run by corporations and not by people. And the future looked very totalitarian. Like books were banned. It was all that Big Brother stuff that you get. And so I think that my definition of capitalism is actually not as bleak as your definition is. I think what you describe is corptocracy, where corporations are running things.
I think that is the inevitable end of capitalism. And that's what I'm saying, late stage capitalism. Commerce, I love commerce. Commerce is simply an exchange, right? Yeah. Commerce can look like bartering. Commerce can look like many things.
And maybe that's a better word for it than... Mm-hmm.
But I'm not talking about commerce. I'm talking about capitalism. And capitalism is about extraction. It is about how much can you take to put more in your coffers. And I don't love capitalism in all its forms, but in its latest stage, which is where we're at, and when people talk about specifically late stage capitalism, that's what we're talking about. That is that idea of it has gone to the place of maximum extraction, where there's really your what do they say? Taking blood from a turnip, whatever, where there's nothing left. There's just nothing left to take. Well, and that is what corporations are designed to do, because they're not, even though the Supreme Court has deemed them human, has given them personhood, corporations aren't people, right? No. And so they are about taking from people to put dollars into not people, right? Yeah. And that's sort of what I think scares people about AI too. It's when we start to remove the humanity from something, when we strip out humanity, there is no end to it. Because it doesn't have feelings to care. Corporations don't care if its employees can sleep or not. It's up to a CEO. But the problem is the CEO is benefiting so much that they basically have sold away their soul to care anymore. And that's where we're at. That's the problem. And whether we call that corporatism or corporate, whatever, corptocracy, whatever we call it, I think we're talking about the same thing. Yeah. It is not commerce. And I think that's where people get confused. I'm not here to say don't make money. We should all make money. We need to make money. Because guess what? The house payment doesn't get paid on love and light. We got to make money. Yeah. The question is about how much is actually enough. Capitalism does not ever talk about enough. Capitalism is only about more. More. Commerce is not about more. Commerce is what's enough. What's enough to make you whole? If you give me this thing, what would make you whole for that thing, right? That could look like I need $5. It could look like I need 10 potatoes. It could look like, you watch my kids for an hour. It's about wholeness. It's about enoughness. That's different than capitalism, which is about more. And I'm here to say enough is important, and enough doesn't have to mean settling, which is what capitalism teaches us it means.
Oh, no, because settling is never good, because you always feel like there's a lack.
It's because you're not whole. You haven't been made whole.
It doesn't matter how much money you make. If you're settling, you're never, it's never enough, which is maybe the problem with capitalism.
That's exactly
it's never enough. Wow.
In my book, that's exactly the problem. Capitalism is about more. Now. Fast, right?
Yeah.
And it feels like that hamster wheel that at first you start getting it goes kind of slower. And then as soon as you start and then you're chasing a never ending finish line. It's the hedonic treadmill, which is what happens to us psychologically when we get engaged in capitalism, because there is no messaging that's like, how much do you actually need? What would be enough for you to feel good? Right?
Yeah.
The goal line continues to change, which is what happens to us. We start making money and we maybe start out. And when I say those CEOs sold their soul, I can see how it happens, right? You start to think, well, a little more, this house is nice, but what if I had like one extra room? And then it's like you get the house, and then you're like, well, wouldn't it be nice if my house had a pool? Then you get the house with a pool and you think, oh, but now that I got the pool, it might be nice if I had an outdoor kitchen. Like there's just always more. There's no satisfying it. I mean, you look at the richest of people. Now you've got Zuckerberg building an underground bunker for whatever. There's never enough. And so because we are never conditioned to say, do you actually need that? Is that actually making your life better?
Here's my thoughts on underground bunkers.
Well, good. I can't wait to hear.
If there is a nuclear war, a nuclear holocaust, and 90% of the Earth's population dies, do you really want to be alive for that?
Well, for anyone who's curious, go watch Paradise on Hulu and ask yourself that question then. It's been helpful to me to say, you know what? Just take me on out, asteroid or whatever the event is. So, yeah.
No, if I hear that there's a bomb coming, I'm driving towards it.
Because guess who you're going to be with? If you're lucky enough to be chosen to be a part of it, you're going to be with Zuckerbergs and Musks of the world. Is that how you want to spend your remaining days? No. Most of us do not. So
no, I'm all for driving towards it. I'll be the one on the shore of the ocean waiting for the wave to take me down.
Yeah, that's going to be my Thelma and Louise moment. Hold the hands and drive off the cliff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So you've changed my mind about capitalism. I like the word commerce better, but I wish that there was a way that we could call the system around commerce something. Like I'm a capitalist versus I'm a commercerist.
Well, I think it's about liberatory commerce, maybe. I don't know. That's a way of thinking of it because there are so many different systems within that. Again, and my book goes into some of those. I wonder if I can find the page whilst I talk about this because mutual aid is a system that can work inside of that. Again, bartering is a system that can work inside of that. There are so many different ways that we can look at how do we have our needs met? How do we get whole without it having to look like how do I get as much as I can? How do I keep taking from others? How do I extract. And there are ways of doing that.
I don't have the name at the tip of my tongue right now, but I do know somebody who belongs to a bartering system, which sounds really similar to this. He's a computer repair dude, and he does these barter bucks. And what they do is they issue you barter bucks. And when you earn them, you get the barter bucks, and then you can spend them at other places that participate. And there are local restaurants participate where you can pay with barter bucks. It's really kind of a barter bucks is not what they're called, but it sounds good, right?
There it does. Well, if you go to page 61 of my book, Liberate Your Business, when it comes out, if you get the print copy, it talks about reimagining commerce, right? Not capitalism, reimagining commerce. And there's different ideas here. Bartering, I mentioned mutual aid, sliding scale and equitable pricing, which is something I engage in. And, you're in the Feminist Podcasters Collective that I run, and that's where there's options. You choose what makes sense for your lifestyle, for your privilege, to say this is where this reflects what I'm able or what my privilege should allow me to pay. And that way it's sort of this like offsetting of those who have more pay more, those who have less pay less. And in the end, the idea being it sort of comes out in the wash, but we're caring for each other, having collective financial goals, working together towards something so that we all try to make it happen and then we all share in the benefits of that. And then redistribution of wealth is another thing. And it's all about collectivism, collective care. And collectivism can sometimes, because of capitalism and capitalists and the patriarchy, it can be rebranded as communism. And communism, there is collectivism inside of communism, but that is a different structure than what I'm talking about, because that is a government system. And we are not talking about a government system. We are talking about a system that we as business owners, those who engage in commerce, we get to choose what it looks like. we live inside of a larger system, a government system, where we do have to pay taxes. We don't get out of that if we choose to engage things, although we do. Bartering, we don't have to pay taxes on. So there is some, there are ways for us to make some different choices. But as business owners, even inside of a system that runs on largely late-stage capitalism, a system that exists inside of a government, in our case, looks like a theoretical democracy, and whatever system you live inside of, you still as a business owner have some choices. We have individual choice that we can make where I can say, I can implement sliding scale pricing if I want to. There's no government agency telling me I can't. And that's different than what communism is. So when you hear people talk about collectivism, just know, or collective care, collective living, that's different than communism. And don't let the right wing freak you out to think like, oh, if I decide I want to make different choices in my business and be more collectivist, that means I'm now communist. It doesn't. It just means that you are thinking about someone beyond just yourself. You are thinking more collectively about how does my community care for itself and each other.
That is one of the things that bothers me about folks that don't think that they should pay school taxes if they don't have children. Because when you're old, somebody has to take care of you. You need a doctor, you need nurses, you need firemen, you need police officers, you need people that are younger than you to take care of you. And if they don't get an education, who's going to take care of you?
And guess who those people are? They're the same people that are then at the nurse's office complaining, saying, they don't teach these kids to even read and write anymore. They can't talk, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but you also said it's not your responsibility. You don't have a kid. I shouldn't have to pay those. Guess who do those kids become? They become the people who are breaking the laws that you're complaining about. They're becoming the people who are running the businesses and, creating pollution that you're complaining about. All of those things. Yes, we are by nature as humans collective beings. We are meant to be in a community. Again, capitalism is a part of the problem is capitalism has tried to take that out of us, because guess what happened in the Industrial Revolution and with collective bargaining? It is when people realized, and I've been talking about this a lot lately, we talk about the 1%, and they are a problem. They are amassing ridiculous amounts of wealth. And yet, 1%, that means there's 99% of us left who could fight against that. And I don't know, again, it doesn't have to look like a physical bloody battle, but there are 99% of us who can fight against what they are doing in that 1%. Do they have a lot of power? Yes. Do they have a lot of wealth? Yes. But we have 99% of us. And when we realized...
When the 99% stop buying from the 1%, what happens?
Correct. Well, look what happened to Target. It works. It has happened. We have collective power. And it certainly happened in the Industrial Revolution at that time that workers said, you cannot do this to us anymore. And they realized, if I just complain about my workload, my boss doesn't care, he fires me, he moves on. But when all of my fellow workers say, yeah, this sucks for me too. Or even if they say, it doesn't suck that bad for me, but I see you, how it sucks for you because you have a family and I don't, but I care about you. So even if I'm okay, but you're not, we're in this together, buddy. Let's stand up and say no. And we do that, change happens. And again, whether you are that person and you can try to collectively get people together to fight in that way, but there are other ways that it can look. It can look like the Feminist Podcasters Collective is an example of us saying the podcasting space just continues to see the same thing happening to it that it happens in every other capitalist space, where those with the most wealth and those with the most power get the biggest microphones, they get the most attention, and they're getting all the money. And this is aggravating. How do we support each other? And as little independent podcasters trying to do our thing alone, we burn ourselves out. We get overwhelmed. We don't know what to do. When we come together and say, hey, here's 50 of us, all saying, this is hard. First of all, just saying this is hard and hearing someone else say, it is hard. That's already collective care and makes a big difference. But then also when you start to say, how do we pool our visibility resources? What resources do we have at our discretion, at our disposal? And how do we bring those together? Because individually, 50 of us trying to go out and learn something may be challenging. 50 of us together, we can get into one room and teach each other. We can have enough power to say, oh, that person who might not have helped us before, they'll come in and talk to 50 of us. They might not talk to me one-on-one, or they would have charged me $100 to do so. Now they're going to come in and do it. There are things that we can do when we work together. And so it doesn't have to be at the massive scale. That stuff's important. But we as individuals have power when we even find our small communities and start to work together.
So let's talk about the Feminist Podcasters Collective. I'm proudly a member of that.
You're an amazing member, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
You are. You're such a contributor.
What I love about that community is that it's women from age 20 to age 60, I'm going to say.
Oh, I think we even maybe top that. Yeah.
And I know that I'm one of the older women in the group, but I constantly am learning from the younger women. It's amazing to me how chill and together the women in their 20s and 30s are compared to the way I felt that I might have been when I was in my 20s and 30s. Now, was I out dancing a lot when I was in my 20s? Probably, right?
Maybe they are too.
Did I care more about having fun? Possibly. But did I think about having my own business and hosting a podcast? I don't know if I could have pulled that off.
Well, I don't know that the first podcasts are about 20-ish years old, so maybe you could have, but yeah, however, I think you might have been a little pre-podcasting. But yeah, it's hard.
This show is 14 years old.
I know, it's amazing. You're one of the, and by the way.
I'm sorry, it's 12 years old. Wait, hold on.
Whatever.
Yeah, 12 years old. Whatever. It's a teenager now.
But I think here's the important thing. Yes, those young people bring stuff to the table that teaches you and energizes you and probably helps you learn things you might not have otherwise, but you're bringing stuff to the table too, right? And that's the thing about this collective approach is it puts value on everyone. Everyone has something they bring to the table, from my 9-year-old son who teaches me all the time to, your 90-year-old grandma who teaches you so much, has so much wisdom to carry. One person has wisdom gained through all this lived experience. Someone else has wisdom through the eyes of, why not? I've never tried it before. They have that enthusiasm, the excitement that gets you unlocked from seeing the ways that you've always been sort of locked into seeing things. We all have something. And too many groups look homogeneous, right? It's all people are the same. We don't have all these different lived experiences. And I love about that space is we have the age experience. We do have our token man, but for the most part,
there's two men. They're two men.
Oh, that's right. We do have 2 men. You're right. 2 men. And maybe we'll get some more. But we have diversity in the types of businesses we run. We have diversity in our age and all of our demographic sort of diversity. There's just the types of shows that we have, what kind of topics we talk about, our approach to talking about those same, even if we talk about the same thing, our personalities. And you can stand to learn something from all of those people by bringing them into the room. And again, that is what it looks like to be collective-minded, community-minded. And that is hard in a world that teaches you only about competition, that everyone else is the competition, so you better watch out. The stuff that we miss out on, and I think about my 20s, my 30s, so much that I missed out on because I was so bought into the capitalist messages and conditioning I received. And I can't go back, but it is sort of sad to think about that. All the stuff that I missed out on because I was so worried about me.
We have a society that is so dedicated to team sports that you would think that being a team player would be important to our society, but it's not. You always want to be the member of the team who's the most important. You want to be the all-star player, right?
It's hard to talk to coaches, and I know this because my kid is now going into team sports, and my husband coaches, and I'm around a little bit of this now. It is really challenging. If you talk to coaches, you will find out it is challenging. One of the hardest things at any age level really is to teach kids and then adults how to be team players and what that really means. It's not just how to get along with other people, but how to inspire, how to take some of the burden off of someone else, right? How to be there and how to celebrate others, how to, help them advance without it being about what you do. Even on teams, so many of these people are focused on being individual players, like you said. And that's why so many of them don't make it to the big leagues where they can't, it just doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And even when we talk again about collectivism, the sport where the people get paid the most is basketball. And you know why? Because they have the strongest collective bargaining. They understand that they all need to get paid. It's not about one of them making the most. And other sports have not brought that same energy. And their players, they have people making tens and hundreds of millions and then other players making almost nothing, right? And basketball is one of those sports where you can ride the bench or you only have one big year and you can make a lot of money. And it's because they've learned to care for each other. And it's, I think that we need to learn how as individuals to be team-minded, collective-minded.
When you watch a basketball game, though, it is a team. The team, there isn't one player that makes the dunk, right? That there's the person who passes it. I don't play basketball, so I don't know the language, but you have to have someone throw the ball to you for you to put it into the hoop.
But
right?
it's the same in every sport, really, right? You can't, in baseball, although baseball, and this is, I think, part of, I can't believe I'm talking sports as if I know a lot about sports, but I do know enough to be dangerous. And like baseball, they have been so focused on the end user, which is the viewer, versus the actual sport, that they have been now making it so that it's just about how do we get more home runs? Because that's what makes the game more exciting for viewers. Well, that means you've created a bunch of individual players who aren't worried about what used to be called small ball. And I think sports in some ways can give us some metaphors as business owners, because it's also not our fault. We exist inside the system. These players exist inside the MLB. They're doing what the system is telling them they have to do in order to succeed. And that's what we as business owners do. So it's not their fault that they show up the way that they show up, right? That's what they've been told. This is how you got to do it if you want to succeed. And that's how we are all sort of responding as business owners. We've been told this, you got to do this if you want to have a successful business, without ever pausing to say, but what is success? Like if the MLB, any of these networks, any of these major league sports would stop and say, what does success look like? For them, success looks like the owners becoming billionaires. That's what it looks like. So unless you're a fan of the Packers, which I am, and we are a community-owned sports team, which is very different. But on the whole, it is how do the owners become billionaires? That doesn't have anything to do with me. It's just because when that is your only goal, how can I build an empire? How can I amass wealth?
Then going to a baseball game is no longer affordable.
And it's how do I extract more from others? And that is what happens in business. And I think it's important for us as business owners to think about that. What is your goal? If your goal is just, I want to build an empire, and I hear women and men say that, I'm building an empire. What does that mean? Because how do you think that happens? You cannot do that without extracting from others. And I don't just mean taking from others. I don't mean like coming to an energetic exchange or a reciprocal agreement. I mean taking, pulling, getting more than they have, right? Being blood sucking from others. That's the only way you can do it. You can only have more than your share if someone else has less. So really think about what your goals are, because when you start saying, I want to build an empire, or I want to have a 7, 8-figure business without any reason behind it, it's just, I want more, at what cost? And most folks don't stop to think about it. And those who do have to wrestle with what that means. And I don't know what it looks like on those dark night of the soul moments for some of these people that we see, for an Elon Musk. But even below that, I mean, there are people in the girl bossy space who are making hand over fist millions. And I don't know what it looks like for them if they bother to stop to have that question for themselves. But
and
I would encourage people
that they brag about it. I built a 7-figure coaching business, and this is how I did it.
So it's the MLM scheme of the girl bossy space, which is the only way most people are getting rich is by telling others how to get rich. Well, they're not actually doing it. They're not getting rich off of something.
That's my big gripe about podcasting right now, is the only people making money in podcasting are the people who sell services to podcasters.
This is what late stage capitalism does too, right? Exactly. Because there's nothing left to extract. They've extracted all that they could. And now the only thing they can do is start to try and get others to believe that they can do the same thing and extracting from them in that way. And so this is what happens.
Can we come back to Feminist Podcasters Collective for a minute?
Let's do it.
Because we're back to podcasting, and I want to make a statement, but I want to make sure I give you the kudos that you deserve. So since joining the Feminist Podcasters Collective, I have actually learned how to SEO my podcast. And I did it by studying the trainings that are in the back, the little back training area. And so in the last 6 months or so, I dominate the Gen X women space. I've been in the Gen X women list, yada, yada, yada. My podcast used to be a top 5% podcast on Listen Notes, and now it's a top 3%. And all of that is because of the things that I've learned from the collective. And it's in the collective. I've taught in the collective. You taught in the collective. Other people, people come into the collective that don't belong and teach. It's truly a collective. But I also applied what I learned.
And that's always important. Good job.
So now,
so that's the kudos to you, because that's where it really belongs.
but without the space that you created, I wouldn't have learned that, right? And thank you to Nikki, the Death Jeweler, for introducing me to you. So
thanks, Nikki.
We love Nikki. Yeah, we love Nikki. So this is what I know as a podcaster who's been podcasting as long as I have. Every person that felt like a big ask. The screenwriter of my favorite episode of Star Trek Next Generations, the author of my favorite sci-fi books, the founder of B&I, the director of the Vatican Observatory, all of those big asks, they all said yes. Because an agent didn't ask them. My
because
assistant
you're a
didn't ask
human
them. I asked them.
expressing a human feeling about another human, and it's very hard for humans to say no to that.
Yeah.
And I think people need to remember that. I also, the human experience doesn't have to mean it can't include a digital footprint. I have human experiences on Threads all the time. It is a social media platform, and the word that's so important that people forget about social media is social.
Yeah.
Social means human. It is us interacting. It's being social, having an experience together. And I try to be very human on Threads. I don't schedule posts. I don't have AI write them. I don't even promote there. I just want to have conversations. I talk about things that I care about. And because of that, and because I put out a very specific ask on Threads saying, this is this new podcast I'm launching called Analogish. Here's what it's about. And I want more Black women on this show because I refuse to have another show that's just a series of faces that look like mine. And I see it all the time. And I hear from these white women that host these shows, well, they don't pitch me. Well, guess what? Get off your ass and do something about it. It's incumbent on us too, though, to have relationships. Relationships are two-sided. So if you're not having relationships with Black women, it's because you're not making an effort to have a relationship with Black women, and they don't think you're safe to have a relationship with. So I post this on Threads after, by the way, a series of it, now 2 years of clarity that I am showing up as somebody who's doing real work around anti-racism internally and externally. So there is some amount of trust built in. But I share this and say, I am looking to have more Black women on this show. Speak up. Tell me, are you one of those people? And not only did I have an amazing response, and I've got more than a dozen women coming on my show, but one of them was Mickey Kendall, who wrote Hood Feminism, which is a book I reference in my book. She is somebody that I
Does she know that?
Yes, I've told her, but I didn't tell her at the time. I didn't approach her. She approached me. She would have never approached me in any other world, right? And honestly, probably if I'd reached out to her agent or something, I wouldn't have gotten any farther. But I approach social media in a social way and have social experiences with real people. And that she's one of many people that I've had those kind of exchanges with. Francesca Ramsey, who's pretty famous online, who's a comedian. I've had many exchanges with her. I've had exchanges with many people on social media that have very large presences. And it's because I just show up as a human trying to have a human conversation. Yeah. Humans love that. We love that. We miss that because we are so inundated by bots, by AI, by people, third-party pitching, agents. It's just like, have a human experience with me. I miss those. And when you do, it's amazing what can happen.
Well, and that's what is beautiful about podcasting. It is human. It's a human-to-human conversation.
We're in someone's brain right now.
Yeah.
More than likely, like most people listen, not all, but many of us are listening with our headphones in. That puts that voice into in your brain. It is like they are living
between my ears.
Yeah, it's like you are in my head. That is incredibly intimate because I don't think any listener would have me inside their body any other way than if it was this, right? That is about the most intimate experience you can have with somebody. And we can't take that for granted, and we need to show up like humans. I don't have AI write my shows. I have real humans on my show. I talk about things that are important. So do you. We talk about real issues with real people, and we shouldn't stop just here. Our whole business should reflect the fact that we are full humans living a full human experience, and none of us want to lose that.
I would love to hear how you actually weave gratitude into your business strategy.
Kandas, this is something I love about you and I need to do better at. I don't always remember, I have some executive functioning issues. I have a little ADHD, so I have a little bit of a hard time sometimes. I will think gratitude and then not always do it. So I'll be thinking about somebody, thinking I love you, whatever, and then I don't send the message. I don't do the thing. But I try very hard. I'm a words of affirmation girly, so I love words of affirmation. So I try to give those when I can think about it. If I'm face to face with somebody, if we're in a space together, if you do something, I really hope and try to say, you're amazing. I am so glad you're in my life. Kandas, I'm very glad you're in the Podcasters Collective because you are an incredible member. You really are. You are free with introductions, which is amazing. And I try to do the same. I try to be really free with sharing things, sharing opportunities, sharing introductions, sharing visibility things, making introductions that will lead to those sorts of things. But I know I could do better. Like, I would love to be the kind of person who sends, and I think you do, so you're better than me. But I would love to be the kind of person who sends like a thank you card. But it requires an executive functioning level that just doesn't seem to exist for me. So for me, gratitude mostly looks like I think it in my head a lot. I do try to really focus on the things I'm grateful for. And then I try to act on it by verbally expressing it to people. But just know, if you're listening to this and you know me, I have thought probably 100 times more than I've ever said to you how grateful I am for you. In my head, I have told you 100 times. You may have only heard it once.
But here's the thing. I already knew that you felt that way about me.
Well, good.
So you didn't have to tell me.
Well, good. Then maybe that's part of it. Maybe I show it in other ways. I don't know. I try. I mean, in my mind, creating space, making opportunity, that feels like a way of showing my gratitude, right? Of like, I think that collective experiences, community care is a form of gratitude, even if it's not expressed like, thank you. It is like, I appreciate you enough to say, I want more of you. I want you in my life more. I want to see you succeed. I want to help with that. To me, that all feels like forms of expressing gratitude outside of just like, I'm writing you a thank you note. But I would like to do more of that too if I were better at it.
Yeah. And in my opinion, my biggest asset is my network. And I believe that the more you spread gratitude, the more you get. And the more I spread my network around and make introductions, the more my network grows. And when your network grows, so does everything else. So
yes,
that's why I'm very free with my network.
There is a chapter in the book, chapter 60, or chapter, it's page 65 is where the chapter starts. I'm looking it up. It's called Network versus Net Worth, because you will often hear people talk about your network is your net worth. And that is a very individualistic way of looking at it. But I talk about networking as collective care, because it is. When we stop thinking of my network as my network and how do I extract from my network, which is transactional.
How do I share it?
How do I open my network? How do I bring more into my network? How do I make my network more networked, right? Because most people think of network, really what they're thinking of is a singular point of access. All these people and then me.
Yeah.
I think of a network as a spider web, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be fully networked. How do all these people get to also meet each other? And there is benefit to that, right? And that's wonderful. I'm not saying there can't be benefit. People remember me. They remember I'm a connector. They will say, oh, Nikki got a mention today because you remembered she introduced us. I will have people who will remember those things. They express thank you for that. But I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing that because I know it's a way of me showing that I care. And it helps me and it helps them. That is care. I think care is gratitude. It's a different word. And maybe a different way, like a different action. But I think ultimately it creates a lot of the same feelings. Do you think? I don't know. Does that feel right to you too, Kandas? That care feels like gratitude?
Yes.
Good.
It absolutely does. It absolutely. And there are so many different personality types. Just knowing the fact that I have coffee made for me in the morning, fresh, that when my husband hears me get up, he makes me a new pot of coffee. He doesn't have to tell me he loves me. I know he does.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think the 5 love languages thing has been debunked a lot by a lot of psychiatrists. And also it's a white dude who comes with all of his issues. All those caveats. There is something to the fact that we all express our care, our love, our gratitude in different ways. But all of those are ways of showing it, whether it's saying it, right, which is, the words of affirmation, giving someone a gift, which I think a card kind of in some ways is both of those, but like giving someone a gift as a thank you, acts of service, making someone a cup of coffee as a thank you. Like there are different ways that we say it. Sometimes it's giving a hug, the physical touch. It's just being together, community. That's sort of, I think maybe that's my biggest one, is being in space together. Feels like that way of showing care and saying, thank you for being part of my world.
Yeah. And the fact that you've created space for people to share with each other is all you let us know through your actions.
That's my hope.
That we are appreciated. So
there are times I fall short, but that's my hope.
I want you to know that. All right.
Good.
So last word, what is the last thing? What is the action step that you want people to take after listening to this podcast?
Can I say two? Because one's self-serving, which doesn't feel really great, but I am promoting my book, as I've mentioned, Liberate Your Business. So I'd
link in the show notes.
Yes, and I'd love for you to check it out. If you're a business owner, if you want to create a more just and equitable world, using your business as a tool for that. But beyond that, I would love for you to make some sort of human connection, right? Audit your business if you own a business, audit your life if you don't, and look for places where humanity has been stripped out of it. Where has it become transactional in your life? Even if it's like, I never go into the bank anymore, I only go through an ATM. What would it be like to just one day go into the bank and have a conversation with the teller, make their day, grab that little lollipop they give you and have that like human moment? Wherever it is, like look at your life and think, where have I started to? And by I really mean, where has capitalism trained me to? So it's not, let's remove the shame from it. It's not your fault. But where have I been trained to remove humanity from my life? And what does it look like to just begin to inject a little bit more humanity back into my days? It makes such a difference. And I just think since the pandemic time, since 2020, I think we are feeling it more acutely than ever, just how much humanity has been stripped from our lives. And AI is not going to help that. And I'm an AI user. I know you are as well. And I think that there are ways that we can use that. But I think we also have to remember that we can't let that continue to further strip our humanity from us. We have to find ways to bring it back into our lives and own that again, because the more we feel human, the more we treat others as humans, and that changes everything.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, the podcast for Gen X solopreneurs who weave gratitude into your business strategy. Our theme music is by Rev Brock and Solely. I've been your host, Kandas Rodarte. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.